You are listening to the Examine Life with Bram Levinson. So it is April 28th today. And as Facebook does once a day, every day, it reminds me of memories, things that happened on this date in previous years. And a year ago to the day was the yoga and meditation retreat in Norfolk, in England. And Norfolk is my home away from home. England is my home away from home. And I've said that about Greece as well. Greece is as well. But to be reminded that a year ago today I was living in that house on the Norfolk coast with that group, that beautiful group of people. It was a small group, we live in a house together, so it has to be a small group. But what an incredible time that was. It was a risk for me to do that trip because it was the first time where I've actually rented a home, and it's the first time where I've lived in the same home, for lack of a better term, than with everybody else than I ever have before on other trips. Other trips, typically everybody has their hotel room and everybody has their own bathroom and that kind of thing. And sharing a house is, it's sharing a house with everything that encompasses. And as much as I know Norfolk, and as much as my heart is in Norfolk, I had never welcomed people there. There were certain things that as I've said in a previous podcast episode, it was a first for me. I had to figure things out. I had to figure out which side of the street the bus came that would take us to where I wanted to bring everybody so I could show them these areas of the Norfolk coast that meant so much to me. And I was working with a caterer who was catering vegan food, and it was the first time the caterer had done this, and it was the first, the caterer was in the inception of his business. The business was in its inception. So it was all a series of firsts. And it was rough on me just because I tend to want things to go smoothly, and I guess I'm a bit of a perfectionist, or I can be anyway. And I wanted to make every single detail perfect for the gang that was there. And it was a moment that I know is very, very, it's sort of regarded fondly by all of us who share that experience. But it's funny, or not so funny, that it came up today as a memory because last week, I believe it was Friday, the past couple of weeks I've been really quite good. And by that, what I mean is I haven't had any really bad days. I know that in the beginning of the initiation into isolation and quarantine and confinement, whatever you want to call it, what I was noticing, what I was observing was that there were good days and then there were bad days, and it was very roller coastery. And I just had to remind myself that, if I was in the process of having what I referred to as a bad day, I just had to witness it and ride it out and know that it would change. And it did. And it always did. And then I guess I fell into a new normal, even though it's temporary, but isn't it always? So I fell into a new normal and have been really, really, really good. And then last Friday, I watched The Big Night In. Now, in England, there is an annual fundraiser, 2 annual fundraisers actually. One is for comic relief and the other is for children in need. And typically they're held as 2 separate fundraisers. Well, this year they joined forces and they did this, 3-hour long special on BBC with all of the entertainers that I'm fond of, and some who I wasn't aware of, who perform from wherever they are in their own lockdown. But everybody performed, and they were raising money, and it was stories of the NHS, the National Health Service over there, and it was they were showing aerial views of England, and it's my home. It's where my heart is. It's the only place that I come back from wondering what my life would have been like if I would have moved there years ago. It's the only place in the world where that happens. And I guess I still battle with that question of, should I have moved there? And it wasn't like it was ever really an option in terms of immigration, in terms of a job. It was never really a possibility. So when I look back on hindsight, I know that I'm romanticizing a future or a past that would have become a future that really wasn't attainable. But nonetheless, some of the closest people in my life live there. My godsons are there. And I have gone there every year at least once over the past, 24 years. So, and not to mention I was supposed to be there a couple of weeks ago. I had a planned trip to go to England, as you know, if you've been listening to the podcast, the episodes. And so, not being able to go now, I was fine with, given all this, all the situation, what's going on there, what's going on all over the world. It made sense. I wasn't about to jump on a plane, even if I could have. However, watching The Big Night In and seeing, real life, real time images from England, it cracked my heart open, and I got really, really emotional, and it hurt. It hurt a lot to know that right now this is happening, this situation globally is happening, to know that I couldn't just get up and go to England, which I know is unbelievably asinine given the situation, and privileged and petty and basic. I understand all of that, trust me. But nonetheless, there was like this little tantrum child version of me that was just like, yeah, but that's not fair. It's not fair. And I found myself wanting. I found myself wanting to just pretend nothing was happening. I found myself wanting to just go to England. I found myself wanting England. I found myself wanting to, I don't know, just not be in this situation, not be in this moment. And I think that it, for many people, comes down to that. There's probably been a lot of pushback and a lot of resentment and a lot of anger and a lot of rage and a lot of sadness from a lot of people. It's normal. And it just speaks to the privilege that we had before this, if we actually even thought that, because that means that, life was unbelievably abundant for us. And it still is, don't get me wrong. I am fully aware of the abundance that I have, even given the situation. Every single day, I'm grateful for running water. Every single day. And I'm not bullshitting. Every single day, I'm grateful for electricity. I'm grateful for internet. I'm grateful for these things that allow us to still be comfortable given a situation that is very uncomfortable. But nonetheless, last Friday, I had a day, and it was very, in my observation of what was going on within me, I realized there was this wanting. And part of that wanting was spilling over into the Paros trip scheduled for September of this year. I still don't know what is going to happen with that. I have already sort of communicated with the group. It's a massive group this year that was scheduled to come to Paros in September. And Paros as well is my home away from home. It is the place I've been going to for years. It's where my soul lands, like England. And I've done a lot of traveling, and that doesn't happen often. So I know that when my soul lands somewhere, I know that, okay, this potentially holds some promise. And lo and behold, Paros in England, man, right there in my heart. And so I found myself wanting to not even have to consider the possibility that I might have to postpone the Paros trip. And what has come to be is that if it's not going to happen for whatever reason, If we can't travel at that point, or even if we can travel, but we have to quarantine ourselves when we get there and then when we get back, if we have to wear masks on the beach and not go to restaurants, I mean, there's no point in going. And so I've communicated this to everybody who's meant to go on the trip in September, and we'll wait. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see how the world changes, because we still have months and months. And everything seems to be changing so quickly. But nonetheless, regardless of that, I found myself wanting, really wanting. And I suppose that it's normal to have these moments. I guess I just wasn't used to it, because my few weeks leading up to it were just really like effortless. I'm very happy being on my own. I'm very happy. Well, I mean, on my own. I mean, I obviously live with my partner, but I'm very happy being inside. I'm very happy being domestic and cooking and doing all those things, and I've got more time to do it all now. So I'm quite happy. And then I had this day, and so I decided to do something last Friday that you all have told me you have been doing over, the last, I don't know, 7 years, is that I went to go pick up one of my books. I literally picked up one of my books and I just opened it up to a random page. And so many of you have told me that that's what you do with my books. And it's fascinating, because neither of my books was intended to be that kind of a tool. The first book, The Examined Life, is like a book, chapters and paragraphs and table of contents, that kind of thing. And the second book, A Year in the Light, I meant it to be 365 pages, each page being a standalone, autonomous contributor to the book, but each page being something that someone could pick up in order every morning for a year, read that day's page, bring it out into the world, and see if it gave them something to focus on for the day, like an exercise in mindfulness. What ended up happening, especially with the second book, is that so many of you told me it became this touchstone where you would just pick it up, randomly flip the pages, see where it landed, and in so many cases it seems like whatever page it landed on was exactly apt and appropriate to whatever was going on in your life. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm having a moment right now, and I can observe that I'm having this moment, or rather that this moment is right now. And so I picked up my book, and I just randomly flipped, and I opened it up to the Constant Craving chapter of The Examined Life. And I don't have the book in front of me. I'm not going to read it to you, but what I found in those words, first of all, what fascinates me when I do like crack open one of my books, it hardly ever happens. I'm more apt to see a social media post that I have put up in the past or someone else has put up in the past, and I'll read it and I'll think, wow, I really don't remember writing that. I don't remember writing it. Some of the concepts I remember caring about and talking about in classes and being relevant to me, because they still are. Some of them I have no recollection. I mean, I don't remember at all. Something must have, and I believe that is the creative process, but something must have channeled through me and just like used me to get the words out. And then once it was done, it was done. But this chapter on constant craving was so perfect for what I was going through, because it basically said, I basically wrote all those years ago, how my philosophy in life has always been that if things don't go the way I had hoped that they would go, or how I had planned they would go, that instead of raging against that, I preferred to believe that I was perhaps dodging a bullet. That if things were going or did go the way, they were planned to have gone, it would have ended up in a really, really bad way. I may have ended up in a bad way. And consequently, whatever plan B was, whatever ended up happening, was maybe not the best option, from the get-go, but was saving me from that worst case scenario. So I was dodging a bullet. And that had me thinking about this whole situation that we find ourselves in. And if you really think about it, the way that we were operating globally, especially in countries that have abundance, was not sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. Every one of us has had a moment of entitlement where we just felt like we were entitled to whatever we wanted. For instance, me wanting to just be able to go to England and tough shit about the situation. Why do I have to care? Why do I have to, deal with this? It's not fair, that kind of thing. Well, listen, no one ever said life was fair, and the fact of the matter is, if that's my problem, then holy shit, I'm laughing. I'm laughing. So if you consider how we were operating leading up to this happening, spiritually speaking, we were forced to stop. We were forced to look inwards. We are being forced to look inwards because all of the things that we used to look outwards towards, we don't have to deal with. Going to work, for those of us whose income has been affected, like all of a sudden the pursuit of abundance, like that's not even an option. Financial abundance is not an option. So, we can't play that game. And so for a lot of people, this is a moment of introspection. And some people are good with what they find. Some people are not good with what they find. And hopefully the people who are not good with what they find are listening to the last few episodes of this podcast, because I've alluded to that. But, I mean, who's to say how things would have ended up if this pandemic situation wouldn't have occurred, and if we would have kept going the way we were going? Who knows? For all I know, we could have been in way worse off shape than we are now. And I don't want to belittle the suffering that is occurring for those who are sick, those whose loved ones are sick, those who have passed away or whose loved ones have passed away. I don't want to belittle that at all, because that in itself is, a personal, I don't want to use the word tragedy because I don't want to be too tragic, but I'm going to, because for every single person who has lost somebody to this, that is a tragedy. But really, who's to say that, if things kept going the way they were going, that something wouldn't have happened or could have happened that would have just left us in so much worse shape than we are, because things could be much, 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 much worse right now. And so all of a sudden I found that the words that I had written all those years ago were finding me in a way that I had never expected, and they were comforting me in a way that I could never have expected. And so I have to thank you all for giving me the inspiration to use my book and both my books as a tool like that. And I know this sounds unbelievably insane, but to seek solace in what I had written years ago, I guess that's a surprise to me. I don't know why it's a surprise, because I do know that in the past, whenever I was experiencing or living through moments of suffering, it was in the teaching that I found my solace, that it was how I felt better, because I would find things coming out of my mouth that I was directing towards other people, but that actually were helping me. They were reminding me of what mattered and how to move forward and how to stay focused. But nonetheless, I do have to thank you all for inspiring me to do that, because I wouldn't have done it if you hadn't had set the example and set the precedent. So, there you are. But I want to circle back. I want to circle back to, a year ago being in England. I have given many trips over the past decade. And with all of this Facebook time, or at least time to respond to the memory notification that I get every day, there are certain periods of the year where I keep getting notifications. 7 years ago you were in Istanbul, 8 years ago you were in Croatia, last year you were in England. I have been looking through those photos, and I've been sort of allowing myself to go back. And I shouldn't say allowing myself, because it's not like I ever prohibited myself, but I'm not somebody who looks back on my professional career. I wanted to say accomplishments, but whatever. I don't look back on what I've done professionally and bask in any of that. I tend to get one thing done, hope I did it as to the best of my ability, and that the experience, more importantly, that the experience was everything for the people who were involved. And then I've got the next thing, and then I've got the next thing, and I've got the next thing. I like to keep myself busy. I like to challenge myself. I like to jump beyond myself. I like to try things I've never done. And so there's definitely a I guess, an artist's ambition somewhere in there. But I've had this time to look back, and I've looked back at the photos of us, photos of all of us through the years, wherever we were. And it sort of fills my heart. It doesn't sort of fill my heart. It fills my heart in a way that I could not have expected. It fills my heart to have these memories and share them with you. It fills my heart to look back on these photos and see people in these photos who met in those geographical locations who are still in contact today. To be a connector like that means everything to me. It fills my heart to look back on those photos and see the smiles, because it seems like every bit of energy coming from every one of those faces and every one of those photos is so genuinely, authentically happy. And that's really all I want to do in my life, is make other people happy. Not to a fault, obviously, but I want to accompany people through their suffering so that they can get back to the happy and get back to the moments where their face doesn't lie, and where the eyes don't lie, and where the energy coming out of the face doesn't lie. And so I suppose that this episode of the podcast is simply a tip of the hat to us, all the hundreds of us over the past decade who have traveled together, to those of you who have come to my trips, to many of my trips over and over, to those who are no longer alive, but who were and always will be a part of that family, the Bram Levinson whatever trip family. To those of you who are coming to Greece, whether it happens this September or next June or next September, it's a tip of the hat to every single one of you who showed up for whatever reason you thought you were showing up for, wherever we were in the world. But what you didn't know was that one day your presence in a photo would reflect back to me, hopefully, what I had been giving out to you in that moment in time. Because I find that looking back over those photos now is nourishing me in a way, again, that I couldn't have expected and that I wasn't really looking for. But wow, did I ever find it. And to have those memories, to have all those memories, the laughs, the food, the beauty of wherever we were, just the social interaction is so important, just to be able to look back and see that and know that that will be again. It's going to happen. We can't avoid it. It fills my heart. And so I tip my heart. Oh, Freudian slip. I tip my hat and I tip my heart to every single one of you for being a part of the jaunts around the world, for coming along with me so I could share the parts of the world, the geographical areas in the world that have made my blood pump faster in my veins and made my heart feel bigger than I ever thought it could. To those of you who contributed with your presence and your time and your money and your energy to those moments that I had organized that honestly left me feeling like, if my body was going to die in that moment, it would be okay because I had everything I wanted. You have allowed me to allow you to find your peace, to find your answers, to find reflection, to find who you are when you travel, to find reconnection to yourself and to your body and to your breathing and to your thoughts and to your wants. It is an honor for me to do this. It is an honor for me to be able to accompany and to guide, especially around the world, the way we do. And that's a present tense statement, because we do. This right now, this pause that we find ourselves on, is just a pause. And eventually we will be able to press that button, and I don't think it will be as long as we think. And we will be able to pick back up, changed, hopefully for the better, possibly seeking a little bit more assistance if all of that change is not necessarily for the better. But we will pick back up, and I think that we are going to be better off for it. We're going to know more about ourselves and about what appreciation really looks like, and about community and about the blessing of simply being able to look at somebody and give them a hug and not question anything. So we will pick back up, and we're going to continue these trips, and I'm going to do them for as long as this body is able. And trust me, I am keeping this body healthy and able, and my mission hasn't changed. If anything, it's just there's been a recommitment to it, because I think now everybody understands the language I have been speaking over the past decade. The language of suffering, and the language of what if, and the language of how do you overcome your own personal adversity. And so we'll continue to do the work, and I look forward to seeing you all wherever we go. And I can't wait. I can't wait to be back there with you. But with that said, that moment of wanting that I had has passed. And right now, I want for nothing except for health and wellness for every single one of us, and the ability to persevere, and the ability to understand the distinction, the difference between social distancing and physical distancing. Because as I spoke to one of you about, and as one of you illuminated me on, it's not about social distancing, and I find that term irresponsible. Physical distancing, absolutely. Social connection, social cohesion, I'm more apt to go that direction. And I'd like us all to change the vernacular so that social distancing isn't a descriptor anymore for this moment in time. I know that that's a big ask and it probably won't happen, but fuck it, I'm asking it anyway. Social distancing is the last thing we need. We need to be socially more together than ever right now. We can stay physically apart, but socially, I refuse. So with all of that said, I am sending you my heart. For those of you who have come on trips with me over the past decade, know that I have been going through our memories together. For those of you who were in England last year with me, it's a year ago today. I hope you're listening, and I hope you know how much I love you all. And that goes for everyone. I love you. I value you. Keep doing your thing. Keep staying above the line. Keep your head above water. Stay in comfort. Stay in hope. Be kind to each other. Be kind to yourselves. And we will meet again so soon. Give it all a think. I'll see you later. This has been the Examine Life with Bram Levinson.